8 airlines. 8 stories that should never have happened. Some of them killed more people than any airline in history. One of them landed a burning plane perfectly and then watched every single person on board die anyway. And one of them lost 2 full aircraft in the same year for completely different reasons. These are the worst airlines aviation has ever produced, and exactly what went wrong. Number 1. Aeroflot. For most of the 20th century, Aeroflot was the largest airline on Earth. It was also the deadliest. Under Soviet secrecy, crashes were simply never reported. The real death toll is estimated in the thousands, more than any airline that has ever existed. But the story that defines Aeroflot isn't a number, it's a cockpit. On March 22, 1994, Flight 593 was cruising over Siberia on autopilot. The relief captain had brought his 2 children onto the flight deck. He let his 15-year-old son sit in the pilot's seat. The boy, holding the controls, applied just enough pressure to silently switch off part of the autopilot. Nobody noticed. The plane began to bank. By the time the pilots understood what was happening, the aircraft had rolled into a stall and entered a spin. 75 people died because a child was allowed to sit at the controls of a passenger jet. Number 2. Korean Air. Through the 1980s and 90s, Korean Air had one of the worst safety records of any major airline on the planet, so bad that other airlines quietly cut ties with it. In 1983, Flight 007 strayed into Soviet airspace and was shot out of the sky. 269 people died. In 1997, Flight 801 flew a perfectly working 747 into a hillside on approach to Guam, killing 228. Investigators found the same pattern again and again. A cockpit culture so rigid that junior officers were terrified to challenge the captain, even as the aircraft flew them all into the ground. It took a complete rebuild of how the airline trained its pilots to stop the dying. Number 3. China Airlines. Not China Eastern, China Airlines, the flag carrier of Taiwan. For decades, it carried a reputation no airline wants: a crash, on average, almost every few years. In 1994, Flight 140 came down on approach to Nagoya. 264 people died, but the most chilling one waited 22 years to happen. In 2002, Flight 611 climbed out over the Taiwan Strait, in clear skies, with no warning at all, and simply broke into 4 pieces in mid-air. The cause traced back to a single bad repair made 2 decades earlier. A patch on the aircraft's skin had never been done correctly. For 22 years, a hidden crack grew under it on every flight. Then, at 35,000 feet, it finally let go. 225 people died. Number 4. Saudia. This is the one nobody can quite believe. On August 19, 1980, Saudia Flight 163 took off from Riyadh. Minutes later, a fire started in the rear cargo hold. The crew did everything right in the air. They turned back. They landed the burning aircraft safely, on the runway, intact. And then nothing happened. The engines weren't shut down for another 3 minutes. The doors were never opened. By the time rescuers forced their way in, the fire and smoke had killed everyone. The plane was sitting upright, undamaged, on the ground. All 301 people on board died, on a perfectly survivable landing. It remains one of the most haunting accidents in aviation history. If you're still watching, you already know this isn't a normal top 10. Take 1 second to subscribe. It genuinely keeps this channel alive, and let's keep going. Number 5. Turkish Airlines. On March 3, 1974, Turkish Airlines Flight 981 left Paris. Minutes after takeoff, a cargo door at the back of the DC-10 blew open. The sudden decompression collapsed the cabin floor and severed the control cables running through it. The pilots were left holding controls connected to nothing. The aircraft dived into a forest outside Paris at near full speed. 346 people died. At the time, it was the deadliest plane crash in history. The worst part, the exact flaw in that cargo door was already known. It had nearly caused an identical accident 2 years earlier. The warning was there. Nobody acted on it in time. Number 6. Garuda Indonesia. For years, Indonesian airlines were considered so dangerous that the entire European Union banned them from its airspace. Garuda, the national carrier, was at the center of it. In 1997, Flight 152 was descending toward Medan through thick haze when controllers lost track of exactly where it was. The aircraft flew straight into a mountainside. 234 people died, the deadliest crash in Indonesian history. A decade later, in 2007, another Garuda flight slammed onto a runway at twice the normal landing speed and burst into flames. The pilot had ignored more than a dozen warnings to abort. It took years for Garuda to claw its reputation back from the bottom. Number 7. EgyptAir. On October 31, 1999, EgyptAir Flight 990 was cruising over the Atlantic when, with the captain briefly out of the cockpit, the aircraft suddenly pitched into a steep dive toward the ocean. On the recorder, the relief first officer is heard calmly repeating a single phrase again and again as the plane plunged. 217 people died. Investigators concluded the dive was deliberate. To this day, the airline disputes it. The truth went into the water with them. It was not the last time the airline made headlines for an aircraft falling out of the sky. Number 8. Malaysia Airlines. Most airlines on this list earned their reputation over decades. Malaysia Airlines earned its place in a single year. In March 2014, Flight 370 took off for Beijing and vanished. The transponder went dark, the plane turned around, and it flew for 7 hours into the ocean. 239 people were on board. The main wreckage has never been found. It is still, officially, the greatest mystery in aviation history. 4 months later, Flight 17 was crossing eastern Ukraine when it was shot down from the ground. All 298 people on board were killed. 1 airline, 1 year, 2 aircraft, 537 people who never came home. Every one of these airlines forced the industry to change. Rules were rewritten. Cockpit doors, cargo locks, evacuation procedures, pilot training, almost every safety system you trust today exists because one of these airlines got something catastrophically wrong first. That's the uncomfortable truth about flying. It's the safest it has ever been, and it got that way the hard way. If this kept you watching to the end, do 2 quick things. Hit like and subscribe. The next one is already coming, and it's about the crashes that should have killed everyone, but didn't.